Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. This is a second part of my hits and losses video that was weirdly restricted by YouTube, and then I had to cut it into two and then it didn't restrict it. So here is the second part of it. Decent bits of kit on Ukrainian helicopters. Right, moving on to distance strikes and ordnance and whatnot. Standoff munitions. More devastation in Kharkiv region overnight. Kupiansk is now back on the front line. Fierce fighting is taking place here, and the public suffer from Russia's terror shelling. So Kupiansk getting hammered. But actually, I couldn't find any information about the Russian use of missiles or drones. And so therefore, I conclude it was a very quiet night over Ukraine, and that's obviously good news for them. Now, this morning, there has been the sighting of cruise missiles, thought to be Storm Shadow Scalp EG cruise missiles hitting somewhere in Luhansk, caught on camera, pretty much striking as well. The Russians are claiming that this is a Taurus, and they're quite adamant about that, and saying that Germany's now providing tourists to Ukraine. I mean, it'd be great if that's the case. I doubt it. Major fire, emergency services involved. Successful strike in Luhansk by Ukrainian defense forces. Lots of video footage about this strike, different angles, different points of time. Ukraine launched a missile strike on Luhansk. Occupied Luhansk, local media reporting a strike on the location of a cluster of Russian vehicles near a machine building factory. I assume, especially when you're using something like a Storm Shadow, it's going to be the factory they're going for rather than time sensitive. Things like vehicles, you don't usually use those kind of missiles to take out vehicles, but it's just obviously good news if you can take out some vehicles nearby. We'll wait to see what the details are of that strike. This is concerning a strike or an attempted strike using drones, not last night, but the night before. Trentelenko says, very nice. This removes most of the Russian extended early warning of PSU airstrikes now that the VKS A-50U fleet is grounded. So there's big radar planes, Trentelenko say, are now grounded. Astra reports that the 509th Separate Radio Engineering Center is based on the territory of the settlement, armed with a container radar. The target detection range is about 3,000 kilometers. This command post at the unit is 650 kilometers from the border with Ukraine and was reportedly damaged in a drone attack. So that is very good that the Ukrainians can strike at really particular important strategic targets deep within Russian territory with their drones, and apparently do some damage, possibly taking out the functionality of that radar system there. Has been the claim that the thermal power station, the Tripilska power plant that was taken out to the south of Kyiv, was taken out with 5 Kh-69. These are newer cruise missiles that the Russians are using. It can be rebuilt, is the claim, but it's kind of pointless given the need for air defences and the lack of air defences, particularly around that power station. So, yeah, and it would take a long time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, but it can be rebuilt. Do you bother doing that if you don't have Patriots sitting around protecting that which is being built? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit in the next segment, but mainly in the next video, or in the geopolitical video, concerning some claims around oil refineries and why the US might be putting up some resistance to them. It might be coming from the oil industry, bit of lobbying going on there by the looks of it. Anyway, explosions in occupied Tokmak, so that's to the south of the Robotina salient, where the Ukrainians were expecting to end up during their, as a result of their counteroffensive. Anyway, strikes there yesterday, apparently, according to the Russians, killed 6 people, including a child. The fake installed head of the occupied part of Zaporizhia, Yevgeny Balitsky, claimed there were also 20 injured. But what I think we can be sure of is that Ukrainians are still going for targets within Tokmak. I don't know the details of what they achieved. Now we're going to go on to other bits and pieces. And this is part of what I was going to talk to you about. So the IEA, is that the International Energy Agency, warns that attacks on Russian plants may disrupt the diesel market. Russia may have 500,000 to 600,000 barrels per day refining capacity offline. So far, the actual drop in throughput has been lower than estimated, though. And you can imagine that there are many in the industry putting some pressure on the US administration to message correctly about whether the Ukrainians should be hitting the oil refining infrastructure. There are so many arguments and counter arguments. Some people say that, well, to be honest, there's not going to be much international effect or much effect on the international pricing and supply of those products, but other people say otherwise. The Ukrainian government has allocated an initial 3.88 billion, almost 100 million US dollars, 3.88 billion hryvnias for the construction of fortifications, according to Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, and they are widespread. They're doing a lot in Kharkiv, a lot in Sumy, and then obviously Donetsk, Kherson, and Mykolaiv too. Uh, some of them are more deterrents, like I think up in Sumy and Kharkiv, we heard Lukashenko say yesterday, we're not going to invade from Belarus because it's just too difficult to get across the border. So there's going to be a lot of that going on, and to put the Russians off from attacking down from Kursk, Bryansk, Belgorod regions. And part of it will be in preparation for the Russians to actually advance on positions, much more concerned with the actual front line where fighting's taking place. The next few months will be the toughest period for Ukraine, says Bloomberg. According to the publication sources, the country is in the most precarious position of the entire war due to severe shortages of ammunition, manpower, and gaps in air defense supplies. This will allow the Kremlin to launch a decisive offensive. Quote, Moscow plans to stockpile 6 million shells, increasing production and purchases from North Korea and Iran, said the publication sources. The US sees no signs of an imminent breakthrough by Russian sources, but admits the risk of a split in the Ukrainian army due to falling morale among the population. But then there are other sources. So a candid message from Ukraine's Chief General Syrskyi: the situation along Ukraine's eastern front has significantly worsened. That's his quote. In recent days, Russian forces have upped their attacks since Russia's presidential elections, he wrote on Telegram. Russia's attacks have been aided by the dry, warm weather, making terrain accessible to tanks, and its forces periodically achieving tactical successes, he said. Syrskyi said that work is underway to strengthen Ukraine's electronic warfare and anti-tank and armoured vehicle defence systems to, quote, stabilise the situation and inflict maximum enemy losses. Now, it's a good time for the Russians to attack for many reasons, but the Russians are also taking huge losses, remember. But if they can sustain those huge losses and Ukraine can't, then you could get to this point. So Bloomberg, Ukraine army collapse cannot be ruled out. So that same article is talking about how, we don't think they're going to collapse, but it can't be ruled out, according to a US official. The collapse of Ukraine's army cannot be ruled out at its most fragile moment in over 2 years of war. So they are under an awful lot of pressure, the Ukrainians, and they are really needing that bill to go through Parliament, not Parliament, through Congress. It's looking, goodness me, Mike Johnson is, I never liked him anyway. I despise him as a human being now more than words can communicate. And yesterday is just more evidence that he is exactly the person that so many people are claiming him to be. Russia continues to go underwater. There's a risk of another dam break. Russian media report that the level of the Ural River in Orenburg has risen again. It's now 11.62 meters, where the maximum allowable value is 9 meters 30. A full evacuation of the population has been announced in the Gazodobychov settlement. Quote, as the flood level continues to rise, there is a real risk of a dam break, the Orenburg District Administration reported. The water level of the Tobol River in Kurgan rose by 7 centimeters and reached 4 meters 16 for 12 hours. Big water is expected here in 4 days, so locals were urged to have a month's supply of their own fresh water. It's not looking good for the Russians, and there's so much imagery coming out of like proper flooding of, well, this is Orenburg, where buildings are almost entirely underwater. It's just really high water. And what is the Russian government going to be doing about this? How much is it going to cost them? What effect will this have on their ability to fund their own war efforts? Water continues to flow in 39 Russian regions. About 12,700 houses are submerged due to flooding. The evacuation of local residents continues in Russia's Kurgan. A siren is howling. People urging people to leave their homes immediately, according to a report in the Ministry of Emergency Situations in Russia. Lots of footage I could show you, but you get the idea. It is not looking good in Russia. So I'm going to leave you with, well, the bad news is here that the Russians have been bombing the heck out of Sumy, the region, and as a whole, and I presume the town or the city. A video to restore some faith in humanity, says Anton Grishchenko. Rescuers in Sumy saved 5 tiny puppies while fighting with fire in a building. Look at the mum, all worried. Thankfully, the pups are fine. They were given back to their mother. So, just something to play out for you. A bit of feel good about puppies being saved. Look how worried she is.
Та вода там нора у них, походу, понял?
Та ні, живий.
Давай куда-нибудь, не знаю, там десь якісь.
Чорне, бідне.
Глянь, його. Все, давай. Все, забирай. Последний, глянь. Тихо, тихо, тихо. Да. Ой, блядь, иди сюда. Иди сюда. Ты живой.
Під час гасіння пожеж було вперше врятовано 5 цуценят.
All in a day's work. Anyway, something positive there for you. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. It might well even be alive. I don't know. A day is escaping me, and I have an awful lot of content still to share with you. Anyway, keep your eyes peeled. Speak soon.